Ladies and gentlemen, y'all might have a seat. I want to welcome everybody to the House Public Safety Homeland Security Committee meeting. We apologize for Tuesday, but we were backed up and we had too many things that needed attending to this week. If I might next say, if anybody has a cell phone, cut it off. If not, pay your fine at the door. Jerry. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 bills in front of us. One may or may not be voted on at the discretion of the chair. First up, we have House Bill 114 by Representative Tanner.
Chairman, I'm here with LC 390953S, also here with Department of Driver Services. The bill I bring, working with them on their behalf to update the code in several areas. I'm going to start with changes, Mr. Chairman, on the bill. The first primary change will be on line 54. This language 54 through 58 primarily deals with allowing someone to have a driver's license suspended in another state and another jurisdiction outside Georgia. If they've met all the other requirements to be able to have a temporary driving permit here in Georgia, we would be able to issue them one. So if they had a driver's license suspension in Tennessee, but other than that, all their requirements were met in accordance with Georgia law, and they were now living here in Georgia, we could issue them a temporary driving permit like we could a driver here in, or any other person in Georgia who had had a driver's license suspension. And then over on the other page, line 70 through 74, this deals with third parties who administer the knowledge test for the driver's test. If the department has third party, such as a school, a driving school, a private high school, or a public high school that's doing the knowledge test, then we're not going to charge them, the individual, a fee for taking that knowledge test, because the state's not doing that. It's the private entity doing the driving test. And then one of the things that it changes in the bill is it does away with the horizontal field of vision test, 140 degrees for both eyes, and the non-commercial driver's license. That's a change. This is a cost-saving measure by the state of about $100,000 a year because of the expense of the machines they're currently having to maintain. There would still be an eye exam, but it would not have the horizontal test. I believe there's 12 other states, if I'm correct in that number, that do not do that horizontal test now, including the 2 states with the most drivers in the country, which would be New York and California. And then on the next page, around line 116, this deals with not having to mail out notices by certified mail. Those of you on the subcommittee know that Prosecuting Attorneys Council spoke at the last meeting, and we were going to work with them on this language. We did that. This language that we incorporated in over the next few sections comes from working with them to ensure they were satisfied that they would be able to continue to prosecute these cases correctly when folks were violating Georgia law. And this will save the state a considerable amount of money. I believe the fiscal note estimate on this was around $1.1 million a year annually that it can save the state. Going on down into 128 and 129, this deals with the suspension. If someone receives a traffic citation, it clearly will state on that citation, if you fail to appear in court to answer this citation on a certain date, your license will be suspended. If they don't show up, they'll receive a letter from the department letting them know your driver's license is being suspended, and that suspension will take effect on the 29th calendar day following the notice to the department from the court of the person's failure to appear in that court. And this notice, the traffic citation, and this again is the language that we work with PAC to develop. The traffic citation will serve as your notice, along with that follow-up mail piece that you'll get from the department that'll be sent first-class mail, no longer be sent certified mail. And then under Section 8, just some cleanup dealing with NOLO NOLO pleas surrounding certain driving offenses of individuals under 21 years of age. If you are convicted of hit and run, leaving the scene of an accident, racing on the streets, fleeing and attempting to elude a police officer, reckless driving, or any offense with 4 or more points, under current law, your driver's license are suspended if you're under 21. All this does is state that if you plead NOLO, it doesn't stop your driver's license from being suspended, and the department will notify you by first-class mail that that's the case. And then the department will send that letter of notice to the last address they have on file. So wherever you indicated your address was when you got your driver's license, that's where the notice will be sent. And then on line 232, 233, this deals with temporary limited driving permits. This is a situation where you've got a carpenter and they have a limited driving permit. This is an example. They're a carpenter. They report to a job site. Their boss says, hey, Kevin, go down to Home Depot and pick up some lumber. They're still working, but they're not actually on the job site. But this would extend that limited driving permit to include anything dealing with that job. It makes common sense, but under current law, it would not be allowed for that person to run to Home Depot and pick up lumber for their construction guy they work for. And again, that's the same thing over on lines 254 and 255. And the next changes come over on lines 329 through 338. And this is some additional language, again, that we work with the Prosecuting Attorney's Council to place in there to make it clear in the law. And it's also going to be made clear on this traffic citation that failure to appear will result in a suspension of the license, and that's clear notice. So there'll be changes made by the state to the traffic citation to clear that up. As you can see over on lines 351 and 352, that does not go into effect. All this goes into effect when it's July 1st if it's passed and signed by the governor. Section 7 and 13 will not go into effect for 1 year after that, July 1st, 2016. The reason for that is local law enforcement agencies, the police departments and the sheriffs, we've talked with them. They already have traffic books and tickets purchased, and they don't want to have to go out and throw those out. So this gives them enough time, and they've indicated to me that 1 year would be more than ample time for them to go through all that they have. It gives the state time to print the new ones in the correct format, so there's no cost incurred by the local governments. And both the Sheriff's Association and the Chiefs of Police both indicate they would support that and would have no issues as long as it had the delay language in there, and we've included that in the bill, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Any questions of the committee? Mr. Jaspers.
Thank you, Representative Tanner. I guess this is for Mr. Mitchell, really. Okay, let's go look on line 28. We're doing the change on the vision. I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable with that. And my question is, we said California, and who else was the other state that the big license number, you said, Kevin, you said Representative Tanner, New York. Do they do anything else in addition to what we're proposing doing here? They have another test that they're doing, or we're going to be doing the same thing that they're doing in an altogether fashion?
I believe that California also has a provision for folks whose vision is so poor that they can use bioptic lenses. We have a similar provision here in the state of Georgia. So I think in those cases what the DMV in California would do would be to refer the customer to a facility that deals with the bioptic lenses, to have that person outfitted with some sort of bioptic device and come back in and reattempt the test. Okay, Mr. Chairman, may I continue?
Certainly.
I just want to make sure so that we have that provision within the code, not to do a similar thing.
That's an existing
code. And in New York, high number of doing the same kind of vision testing. Do they do anything else?
I can't speak for New York, but I do know that is the case for California.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Two other nearby states that use the eye charts to test for the vision, South Carolina and Texas. Texas has a good many licensed drivers in that state as well.
All right. Ms. Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, I have a question as it relates to the vision, but I'm down to section 4 as it relates to the driving tests. I think so, probably in the same line. Why would we, I know the cost savings might be significant, but why would we eliminate a test? Because in my area, I have a lot of seniors who have glaucoma and other problems, and that test is very critical to determine whether they can get their driving license. So I don't want to be riding on the road with somebody that can only see in the front and the back of them, and they cannot use that peripheral vision like they need, like the rest of us do. So why would we eliminate that testing part? And I know the machines probably don't cost that much to maintain, and the cost savings. Could you tell me, first of all, what's the cost savings, and then tell me why would we eliminate that? Because I look at that as a safety factor.
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. The cost of each machine is a little over $1,200, and we have 64 locations around the state, so we have upwards of 500 of these machines that we currently have in our offices. On average, it costs the department approximately $100,000 a year for purchases and maintenance. Since FY09, we've spent over $500,000 in purchase and maintenance costs. To the concern about the safety, before we put this proposal out there, we did as much research as we could internally at the department, and there is very, very limited research out there that makes a clear connection between highway safety and a person's peripheral vision. Here in the state of Georgia, actually, for the past 10 years, the traffic fatalities have been trending downward across all age groups. So, if there's something out there that can conclusively say that a particular degree of peripheral vision will have X impact on highway safety, we're open to that. We certainly are.
Mr. Chairman.
Continue.
I appreciate that, but these machines were put in place originally for this problem. So the problem is not there. The data might not be there right now, but the problems are still there. You do not have any data in front of you to verify that, but these machines were put in place years ago because of that problem. So my concern is getting rid of these machines, and I'm still looking at the safety factor for all of us who drives out on the highway.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Let's see, number 26. Who would that be?
That's
then?
me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And I think the previous two questions answered some of my question. I wanted to fully understand comparatively the accuracy of the what are we calling the new test? The eye chart test compared to the current arrangement, the horizontal field of vision. So if you were just comparing both of these, which is more accurate? Is one indeed more accurate than the other, or is there no evidence that there's any difference at all?
I think, and I'm not an eye expert, but I think both serve a different purpose. And I guess I would probably defer to the people that are from the Optometric Association here that are in the room to better answer that question.
Okay. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For the question. Let's see, number 10. Who would that be? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is on line 116, and I understand what you're trying to do and the economics argument of it. I think you said that it's over $1 million that would be saved by changing it from certified for first class or to first class mail. Are there any potential legal repercussions that would not be a satisfactory form of notice by just mailing it first class instead of having it certified?
That was one of the concerns with the Prosecuting Attorney's Council in the original draft of the bill. And we went back and they worked on that issue to make the changes to the traffic citation that we talked about so that this would be done. You receive the ticket, it has clear notice on the ticket, you sign for receiving the ticket that if you fail to appear on this date, your license will be suspended. And that information's been put in statute also, and the tickets will be changed. And they felt very comfortable that would provide proof to the court that the person had been served properly. But that issue was a legitimate concern in the original draft, and it was pointed out by PAC, and we've addressed that to their satisfaction.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Very good. Do we have any other questions of the author from the committee? Refresh my memory. We've already heard this bill at the subcommittee level.
That's correct.
We have someone that wants to testify. Normally, we don't have testimony if there's already been a chance to testify, but since I know the gentleman, we're going to let him, if you want to take to the well, Mr. Valines. If you might.
I'm Aubrey Valines. I'm the General Counsel for the Georgia Optometric Association, and with the utmost respect to the proponent of this bill, we have problems with the elimination of the peripheral vision test, and I want to point out a couple of things. Currently, new drivers and drivers 65 and older have to take the peripheral vision test. There's a reason for that. Back in 2005, you changed the law and eliminated those in between. And the 65 age group, is, as the representative pointed out, is the risk age group when glaucoma and diabetes and other things kick in that affect your peripheral vision. We think it's bad. Right now, 38 states have some sort of requirement for a peripheral vision test. 12 do not. They cited California. In California, you can drive as long as you can get under 2200 vision. 2200 is legally blind. That's really not a good state to follow. New York is 2070. I don't know what the cab drivers are required to have there, but 2070. New York does require some sort of test. California requires none, but it is a bad state to be citing. Our primary concern is those drivers 65 years and older. I think the best way to describe it in just common sense, I'm from Lynchburg, Tennessee, and we had a mule day there. And you put blinders on a mule or blinders on a horse so they can't see the side. If you don't have peripheral vision, I don't need any expert studies to tell me I can't see the side. I can't see what's coming over here. I can't see down the railroad track. I can see straight ahead, just like that mule and just like that horse that can see straight ahead. But I can't see to the side. If you have any doubt about that, you don't allow windows in a car to be completely blacked out so you can't see to the side, do you? And you got those mirrors on the side so you can see a little bit of the side as well. But now you're going to eliminate a test for peripheral vision. This is really important. Doesn't put a dime in our pocket. We don't do these tests. The department does. We've talked to them and tried to get a compromise with them. We haven't been able to do that. I cannot overemphasize, and the best analogy I can give is you're going to allow people to drive with blinders on. Right now in Georgia, you can drive if your vision can be corrected to 20/60 in one eye and blind in the other, and after you pass this, no peripheral vision. I don't really think that's what your constituents want. Believe it or not, I got a 4.5-year-old out there, and I don't want to risk her. This one part of the bill is bad. You're going to save about $100,000 a year. One death will eat up that and more. It's just not worth it. 38 states do not have it, and California allows you to drive correction anywhere below 2200 legally blind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
And for questions?
I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the committee? No? You got lucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm glad to hear you've got a 4.5-year-old grandchild, Aubrey.
It's a daughter. Now I've got a 29 and a 26-year-old too.
You have a daughter 4.5? It's obvious.
I'll talk to you later about that.
I'm not. Well, I've known you an awful long time. It appears to me that somebody else should have had some blinders on.
I rest my case.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone else now? This bill, we've made an exception on this testimony. Is anyone else that wants to say a brief word, either for or opposed to this legislation? If not, what's the will of the committee? Mr. Subcommittee of Subcommittee A, you heard this bill again, I think, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Would you like to report back to this full committee? With a do pass recommendation.
Yes, I report with the do pass recommendation. I move the do pass.
Thank you so much. All right, we have a motion do pass. Any further discussion? Any motions to be made? No motions for any amendments? All right. We have a motion. We have a second. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I was trying to find the language. I would move to amend the issue that was raised in terms of the peripheral vision and to keep that test.
Do you have the lines?
Section 4.
All right. State your motion.
The motion would be to retain these lines and not delete them in Section 4. Lines 88 through 91.
All right. All right. First, if you may, counsel, would that be the proper motion? I think what they're saying is not to allow that deletion of the Aubrey Valines blinder amendment.
As well as line 28.
That would be correct.
Sure, to unstrike and horizontal field of vision on line 28.
All right. Julius, can you see of anything else pertaining to that they need to know or that we're missing on that particular issue? While he's looking, Ms. Frazier?
Oh, I was about to make the same motion that.
Let's see. Mr. Jaspers?
Mr. Chairman, also on line 28 is a short section that's related to the amendment.
All right. All right, the motion that I'm presuming that the motion made is to unstrike a horizontal field of vision on line 28, and then on line 88 from the word and to 91 nasally to replace that language. Is that correct? All right. Mr. Glines, you haven't properly given these folks a little instruction about how to make an amendment in advance, but do you have anything else that would be pertinent to this?
Probably on page 2, line 27, you struck the horizontal field of vision there. That's line 28.
20. Line 28, you mean?
On my version, it's line 27.
Then you certainly have been wearing blinders. You don't even have the original, you don't even have the proper bill. All right.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion to amend as stated. Julius, you have those? We have a second on this motion to amend? All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Ayes have it as an amendment. Now, we have and if I might ask, would it be proper that we do this in the form, is there any further amendments? then what we need to do, I'd like for this to come out as clean as a committee substitute with the permission of the committee. Any objections to that as a committee sub? If not, we have a motion to pass this bill forward as a committee sub as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes clearly have it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That took a little bit longer than you thought it was.
All right.
All right, and, we have in front of us House Bill. Mr. Lunston, you need to move a bill before you got another committee you need to get to.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, if you would come forward with House Bill 338.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 338. For those of you who have been here, you may recall it as House Bill 720 last year. It went through judicial, came through, was passed by the House, made it over to the Senate and died in the Senate rules, or was set aside in the Senate rules because of the joint study. It was because of its connection with the joint study committee that was done over this past year that dealt with technology in the court system. So this bill has, as I said, been through judiciary. It's passed the House and made it to rules in the Senate where it was set aside. But the House Bill 338 deals with technology, officer safety, clerical efficiency, funding, and local control. Technology, as we all know, is a driver of many things in our world today. The use of new technology is often beneficial, but it always comes at a cost. Most of you are probably most familiar with an officer writing a ticket on a carbon-based multi-copy ticket. Most of you are aware I did that for 30 years, so I have a little familiarity with it. The bill that I bring to you today is one that would help all police officers, all police agencies in Georgia have the opportunity to employ this new technology and to reap the benefits from it. The electronic citation system is a proven technology that is already in use by the Georgia State Patrol, the Department of Natural Resources, and many other agencies, larger agencies across our state. For those of you who are not familiar with the particular electronic citation system, the system uses a handheld computer slightly larger than a cell phone. It has scanner capabilities and drop-down categories to populate information onto a citation. A printed copy is produced for the violator by an in-car printer, and the citation can then be transmitted to the appropriate courts. This is first and foremost an officer safety bill. The longer an officer is on the side of the road with a traffic stop, the greater are his or her chances of being injured or killed. The use of this system reduces the amount of time an officer spends on a traffic stop by almost 50%. The average time it takes an officer to complete a routine traffic stop with a handwritten citation is about 16 minutes. With the e-citation, that time is reduced to about 9 or 10 minutes. Because the system is electronic, it also eliminates legibility issues with citations, both for the violator and for the courts. This also eliminates dismissed tickets because of handwriting errors. Instead of paper citation having to be sorted, physically carried to multiple courts, scanned or manually fed into a court system data, you transmit the citation directly to the courts just like you would send an email. This represents a great savings in manpower. Now, while this system has a great many benefits, the reality is that for the mid-sized and smaller agencies around our state, the cost of implementing and maintaining this new technology is a challenge to local government budgets. As a county commissioner for several years and chairman of a county commission, I can attest to that fact. House Bill 338 provides for a local approach to implementing and maintaining an electronic citation system. Local governments who want to embrace this technology will have a method for making this happen. This bill permits local governing bodies to authorize the clerk of courts to collect a fee of up to $5 for the purpose of creating a fund to be used solely for the implementing and maintaining of an implementation and maintenance of an electronic citation system. Local governing bodies can implement the process by passing a local resolution, and they can control the amount necessary to collect each year by a similar act. So, in summary, this bill permits local governments, by an act of local legislation, to authorize the clerk of courts to collect a technology fee of up to $5 to be used to establish a fund for implementing and maintaining electronic citation systems administered by the local governing authority. This is for officer safety. This is for clerical efficiency. This provides for funding, for local control, and reporting procedures. It also contains a sunset provision. I've coordinated my efforts with the ACCG, GMA, the Sheriff's Association, Chiefs of Police, the Clerk of Courts, and the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, and they are all on board with this. And I thank you for your time and your attention, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have about the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is $5 enough?
This is a model that's been used across the country. There are several other states that have put something similar to this in place. That's the suggested amount. For your larger agencies, more than enough. For your smaller agencies, it may take them a while to accumulate enough in their fund to be able to move forward with it. But this is the model that has been used across the country. There are some things that have come about in the industry that supplies the electronic citation systems as well as the support for that. And if something of this type is established, then they're able to put some financing options on the table for various communities that would seek to move in this direction.
Okay. My understanding of technology, and I understand the sunset provision, which appears to be that it needs to be reauthorized every year. Is that correct?
Well, there is a provision for it to be authorized every year. The sunset provision is a 9-year, I think. The year 2024, I think, is the date of the actual sunset. But yes, there is an annual reauthorization required at the local level.
Okay. Because with constant upgrades to technology, and I would assume the same would be true for those that manufacture these products and services, there may be an ongoing obligation to keep updating and maintaining.
The cost is for the implementation and the maintenance, ongoing maintenance of electronic citation systems. But if you will notice in the language of the bill, it is very tightly defined. It is not to be used for any other purpose. It's very tightly controlled. So the only thing that it can be used for is for the acquisition and the maintenance of the electronic citation systems.
Okay. My last question is lines 85 through 89. It gives any eligible voter who resides within a jurisdiction that imposes a fee pursuant to this article standing to file an action in Superior Court to seek appropriate injunctive relief in order to ensure such fee is being levied or funds collected from such fee are being used as required by this article. My understanding of injunctions is that you either force somebody to do something or you prevent somebody from doing something, whereas this appears to be an ability for somebody to file an action and get some data as to whether or not the money is being spent correctly. Is that an accurate reading?
This language was provided by Legislative Counsel in relation to an issue that was brought up by a fellow attorney of yours.
So what is your understanding of what this does?
It provides the public the ability to question the local government just to assure that the monies that are being collected are being used for the purpose that they're being collected for.
No, it's given legal standing.
Okay. I don't understand that, but okay.
I'm not an attorney, but I think what that's saying is that this is sort of a safeguard. And
It is.
I'm not wrong. It's a safeguard that if you're a citizen in that jurisdiction, that you have legal standing, if needed, to file a suit to either have it abolished if they're not using that money in the proper way. That goes to this electronic citation method. Is that not what it's doing?
Right, yes. I think the history behind the reason that was put in the bill simply boils down to just making sure that the indicated purpose of those monies that are being collected is actually being used for that, and that gives the public an avenue to be able to challenge that or question that.
Why would it need to be done through court? Why couldn't it just be done through an Open Records Act request?
Well, I'll have to defer to legislative counsel on that. That was the language that was suggested by at the time that this was put together.
Because here's my concern. This is a cost-saving measure, right? Anytime that you go into court, that costs money, and it's going to cost whatever entity it is that has to defend this. Say it's just a frivolous suit, and it's filed over and over again, or multiple people file it, and it's just frivolous. That's going to cost money and resources. It seems to me it might make more sense to just do it through an Open Records Act request instead of giving somebody the ability to go into court and file.
If I might add to that, and again, I'll state I'm not an attorney, but I would probably guess that I think the reason is that there's a distinct difference between an open records request to a local elected, to a local agency. Yes, you might get that information, but that may be all you get is the information, and then they continue to collect money, but they don't have an electronic fine system, and that money gets stuck into the general fund, and it's just another rat hole that money goes into this for the unintended purposes. I think what the gentleman's trying to do is say that if you're a citizen of that county, and if that county or that local jurisdiction that has an electronic system that's passed that duly recorded resolution, if they're not running the system, then why continue to charge the $5 on each citation to throw into the fine? Maybe that was aimed toward DeKalb County. I'm not sure. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding of why that provision was put there. It was not in my original bill.
Any other questions, Mr. Holcomb?
No, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Frazier.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe this question might be for you, Mr. Chairman, but I just need some clarification. Currently, we have legislation already in place to collect, for example, traffic citations. Monies that are collected from traffic citations normally goes back to the local municipalities, and this funding is for purchases of vehicles and other equipment that is needed. I need some clarity. That's what I'm asking for. So I'm trying to say, is this an additional fee to that? Now we need to fund the electronics because that's
this is a I call it a chooser fee. The only people that pay it are those who choose to violate the law and happen to be caught and go through our court system. Right. So this is a fee like a number of other fees that we have in our this code section. Section 1 is existing law, and if you look at line 40, right, all that does is add this one fee, electronic citation, to the electronic citations fund in line 40, and that goes solely and purely for the purpose of funding initial cost and operation, implementation, and funding of an electronic citation system.
Okay, so currently what we have is the monies that we collect. They are already.
Those are already identified in the previous in lines section 1, lines 10 through 14. This simply adds. All I'm doing is adding line 40 and 41.
Okay, a new funding.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions, Ms. Frazier?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Longford, just for clarification, I was just wondering now, is this fee going to be attached to all criminal cases, or are we just talking about traffic violations?
Title 40 traffic.
Traffic.
All
right. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess Representative Lumsden, this is two questions. One really is, why'd you pick 2024 as a sunset date? Is there a reason? What's your gut reason to have a sunset on this?
My original bill did not include a sunset date. As I said, this bill went through judicial review last year. Some of the things that we have incorporated here are some suggestions that they made during the course of that. And the sunset, as I mentioned, we had just completed a joint technology study over this past year about technology in our court systems. This was part of that, but it was not totally included in that. Technology changes so much as we go forward. I'm not sure where we're going to be 10 years from now. Something could come along 5 years from now and be totally different than what we have here. So this was a provision that was placed in the bill during the course of perfecting it last year, if you will, to provide a date certain as a sunset on this. And then at that point in time, depending upon what the circumstances are, it's subject to reauthorization.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more, please.
Please do.
This is just a curiosity to me. You know, on line 64, we talk about the electronic citation fund. You know, so the governing authority is going to be the one that's going to disperse the funds.
Right.
You know, I guess mine is, what criteria are they going to use? And how, and I understand, you know, we look back there on 86, we had civil action. You know, somebody can ferret it out if they choose to. I guess mine is just to ensure for your and this good cause that money is, how does that work? I mean, my curiosity is, how do you make sure that money, you know, is through the governing authority just on their good faith and will, or is that, I mean, I may be ignorant of the process, I guess is what I'm getting at.
It's a very tightly controlled process, very detailed in the bill itself, but alluding to the issue that we raised earlier, it provides for public review of that, and if there seems to be some inappropriate use of that or something is not being done, then that provides an opportunity for the public to weigh in and call their hand on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
So the author probably wouldn't have a mind if somebody wanted to amend that sunset date to a different date, something.
My original sunset was 10 years. I think we settled on 8 years as a compromise from dealing with it in judicia.
And you probably live with a 5-year sunset, since that's generally what we do on most sunsets.
The only problem with that is some of our smaller departments, it may take them 3 years of collection before they have enough to really move forward and implement the cost of the system.
All right. Any other questions from any of the committee members? You know, this thing sounds like an old hat. I believe I've seen this bill a time or two in the past. All right. Do we have anyone, since this bill has not gone through the subcommittee, we'll be taking testimony. I only see one person, Susan Lee from Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners. And you're here to assure us that y'all will only maintain that money for the purpose intended.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Representative Lumsden for bringing this bill forward. Gwinnett County purchased an e-citation system a few years back. The main purpose for purchasing that system was officer safety. Our Board of Commissioners wanted to do that, and I'm not going to repeat what Representative Lumsden said about it. Excuse me. But their purpose was to get our officers off the road, off 316, off 85 quickly, and the e-citation process would let them do that. Also, when you have paper citations, as again the representative was talking about, passing through so many hands, they get lost. So the efficiency factor for e-citations was very important to us. It is officially on our legislative agenda for the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners this year to pass this. Looking at the number of citations issued in 2014, we would stand, if that number was about the same for 2015, we would stand to get about $450,000. Now, we also have 850 police officers. So for us, that money will actually help a lot as far as subsidizing our general fund to be able to pay for the maintenance of the system. One of the things that's very important that we're looking to in the next couple of years is a total upgrade of the system. That $450,000 won't cover it, but again, it will subsidize our general fund. It's very important to our commissioners that we be able to use the general funds that they appropriate each year to be able to provide the services, obviously, to our citizens. So this helps them have more general fund money available to do that. So Representative Holcomb, with your question about is it enough, $5 is certainly going to help us. Like I said, $450,000 a year will help us substantially in paying for the system. And we believe that, again, officer safety is first, and this system works well for us. Thank you.
Stand for questions, because I think you have some.
Okay.
Chair would like to ask this question before I recognize committee member. How much money are we speaking of on these electronic? What does it cost to purchase an electronic citation? And being a larger agency, I'm sure y'all's would be a little bit different than one of the smaller agencies.
Yes, sir. It was upwards. It was a capital project for us. It was over $2 million to purchase the initial system. And then each year we add officers, and we have to add the components. You're talking about, as the representative was talking about, the printers, all the hardware, software, everything that goes with that is very expensive. So the initial purchase was over $2 million.
Is this basically like what we see in the state patrol cars?
Yes, sir. I do believe it's the same type of system where, again, you've got populated areas of the drop-down menus, populated areas that makes the process a whole lot faster for issuing the citation. And
your position with Gwinnett County is?
I'm a legislative liaison with Gwinnett County. I've been with the county for 24 years, and I also served as the HR director, so I'm very familiar with our police department.
So anyone that gets a citation that's going up 85 could call you to see if you might could steer them through the process?
Well, we have a new police chief, so I don't know about that.
Very good. All right, you have a couple of questions. Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm in support of the bill, and I really didn't have any questions until you testified. He said something in regards to, and I think Representative Frazier alluded to this as well as Representative Holcomb, in regards to the citation funds being dedicated to only the electronic or e-ticket and all this kind of thing. That is dedicated funding. Mm-hmm. But then you just came back and said that this dedicated funding is going into the general fund. And so I'm a little bit concerned because I may be very wrong, but we've had some specialty tags and stuff over the years that tried to collect into our general fund here in the state, and it just didn't work out. So how do you guarantee that these dedicated funds going into the general fund will actually be dedicated to the equipment for e-citation?
Thank you for the question. Let me clarify how we do it in Gwinnett County, and I believe in many other counties. This fund would be pulled into, for the purposes of determining the budget, into the general fund discussion as far as our budget meetings are concerned, and then the money allocated. When we talk about the budget in and of itself in Gwinnett County, we actually distribute the monies out to the departments, and this would be for this fund that need that money to pay for the maintenance of the system. One year, it might be our IT department if we have a big upgrade. The next year, it could be our recorder's court if they need some new equipment to be able to communicate with the e-citation system. It's totally based on what the needs are of the county, and that's why we wanted it under the one county umbrella to be able to be allocated for those needs, given what the departments tell us they need for that year. So that's basically how we do it. So when we do that, we actually, like I said, we take that money and allocate it based on what the needs are, but then the general fund actually does not have to sustain that hit, and so those funds can be used for something else in the county. But these funds are strictly for the e-citation process, whether it be in IT, whether it be in the police department, whether it be in recorder's court in Gwinnett County. So as we make sure that those are put where they're needed to be, then we can make sure the system works correctly.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
And thank you for that response. My other concern or question would be, let's say you were going to send $50,000 down to the police department, and we're in a recession. We're back in 2008, and there's some budget constraints. And you collected $8,000 on these citations. Would that police department get the $50,000 they were going to get originally out of the general fund plus the $8,000, or would you subtract the $8,000 from the $50,000?
We would subtract the $8,000 from the $50,000 to be able to make sure that we're using the budget funds like they are intended for. Our process is also audited. The budget process in and of itself with the e-citation funding, where that's allocated in our budget and what we call budget control centers, that's audited to make sure that that money that's collected for that purpose is going for that purpose.
I guess maybe I didn't.
Have at it. You got another question?
Didn't do the question right. if the original annual budget for the police department called for $50,000, okay, but you're in a crunch now, and you've collected $8,000 for e-tickets, would the department still get the allocated $50,000 plus the $8,000 that are dedicated and directed to the e-ticket?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry if I misunderstood your first
Yeah, 'cause,
question. That's if the need is in the police department for that budget year for e-citation related needs, then they get that money.
Thank you so much.
I apologize.
Basically, this is a funding source for those who wish to have these type of devices. Bad thing is that you got some folks that they may look at this like if it doesn't pay for it, they may not want them. So, Ms. Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a funding source, but I need to know about speed and accuracy with this e-citation. So a police officer pulls me over. I'm going down I-20 East doing the speed limit, of course. And I get pulled over. And so the process is still the same. He's going to get out of his vehicle. He's going to come over. He's going to ask me for my driving license. He's going to write me a false ticket because I wasn't speeding. Correct? Now, are we saying that this e-citation is when he gets back into his vehicle and he writes everything down and he's going to send it electronically, right? He's going to be able to get off the highway. That's the safety factor in it, right? So my question to you is, how fast is this e-citation going to get to headquarters before I can make a call?
Well, it's real time. I mean, it will be generated when there's just as the representative was talking about, a handheld computer. So it's real time. It'll get you there. It'll get your ticket there to headquarters. Now, each department's going to be different as far as when they accept those through the electronic process and then pass it on to the recorder's court.
So that means
Or whatever court it is.
electronically it's going to go in right then.
You're going to be able to get it a lot faster, I would venture to say, than you do today, because our paper tickets in Gwinnett County go from the officer's vehicle to the precinct to headquarters, our records folks at headquarters, then to recorder's court. You're talking a series of days at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Except it might have brought a question up to me. Do we really want these type of? What if we need to get an officer? Maybe if we need to get an officer to rejudge that mileage because of a faulty radar. All right. Any other questions from any of the committee members? Any questions from any of the committee members? If not, we have. You have a question, Mr. Holcomb?
Sorry, I have one more. For the author, Representative Lunston, one of the things that you said caught my attention when you said for small departments, it could be 3 years before they could move forward to implement the system. So does that mean that they could be collecting monies for, say, 2 years and they would not have acquired anything for the system?
That's my understanding of how this would work, yes.
Okay. In light of that, that causes me great concern with allowing the injunction then, because you could have that exact scenario where 2 years into it, they don't have any of the equipment, but they're trying to save up the resources to get the equipment, and if somebody files an action before year 3 and they have enough money, they wouldn't be able to move forward.
Well, the acquisition, the money can only be used for the acquisition and maintenance of a system. If the money is collected, there's no provision in this particular bill or nothing that I'm familiar with as far as the law is concerned to specifically address the issue that you raised. At least it's not in the bill. It simply says that the monies collected are to go specifically to this fund for the sole purpose of acquisition and maintenance of the electronic citation system.
Okay. All right.
All right. Ms. Frazier, I see you.
Yes, sir. Just one last question. Is this legislation, I have rural counties, and some of my counties, it'll take up to 5 years for them to raise money. Is this a choice?
Yes, this is local legislation. It's all we are doing is creating a pathway. If they choose to follow it, we're creating a pathway for them to be able to implement the technologies. This is the direction that we're going in.
Yeah, we're going in. That's fine.
Technology drives everything. The question is, how do we make it possible for as many departments across our state to benefit from the technology that is available.
All right. I was just trying to make sure it's not a mandate. It's a choice.
Provides local governments, by act of
option.
local legislation, an option.
Thank
That's
you.
all this does.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Glanton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Is this the appropriate time?
This is the appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
We have a motion do pass. Any further questions? Any actions, any amendments, any motions?
Second.
Mr. Holcomb.
Chairman, I move to delete lines 85 through 89, which are these lines concerning the injunction.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right. We have a motion to amend. I might take a minute to ask our counsel. Julius, would you comment on that, on the action of that, knowing from what you've heard that what the author's intent was by amending that language out?
Well, I mean, I think that the language does accomplish what the author has stated that it does. From a legal point of view, I don't see an issue with it.
Basically, it holds the governing authority's feet to the fire if any voter can enter into a cause of action. All right. Mr. Lumsden, would you like to comment on the amendment?
As I said, this was added, but I think it's a good addition, and it does provide some oversight, or at least the ability for folks to challenge what's taking place at the local level.
All right. We have a motion for an amendment. Do we have a second to that motion? We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to strike lines 86 through 89? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay. It appears that the nays have it. Would y'all like a hand count? No. The nays have it. The amendment fails. Now we're back to the original question. We have a motion. Do we have a second on the original motion?
Second.
I see another light blinking down there, number 24. Who's number 24?
I'm 24, but I didn't.
All right. Now I see number 26 blinking.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Now we have a second. Any further questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have House Bill 123, and the chair apologizes to Chairman Yates. We were, for year, having to wait around because we were told by the two past authors that their bills were just going to be quick bills, and neither one of them seemed to be so quick. Chairman Yates, House Bill 123.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Earlier this year, Mrs. Fletcher came into my office and told me a story and asked that I introduce a bill to keep this accident from happening to anybody else. What had happened is her daughter was killed when a trailer came loose from a truck and rammed into their vehicle and killed her daughter. And I thought of my experiences early when I was with Ford Motor Company in Denver, Colorado. I had a travel trailer, weighed about 1,200 pounds. It's a camper trailer. And I was glad they had such a bill because I had a restraining chain on there because I would go across the Continental Divide at 12,100 feet. And I felt better with it on it, and I was surprised that Georgia didn't have something. This earlier went through the subcommittee, and your committee asked the Legislative Council to change the language, and the language that they came up with is, do you have a copy of it? I guess it's substitute to House Bill 123, and it's LC 390939S. Briefly, it says no person shall operate any motor vehicle with a load or in such vehicle unless the load or in such vehicle is adequately secured to prevent the dropping of shifting of such load onto the roadway to such a manner as create a safety hazard. For purpose of this code section, a load shall include but not be limited to a trailer or defined as paragraph 68 of code sections 40-1-1. Any person who operates a vehicle in violation of this code section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. So that's the language that the Legislative Council gave after y'all sent it back to them.
That sounds like that cleaned that up pretty good since the last pass through here you had on this.
Well,
all right. Do we have any questions of any of the committee members? Ms. Frazier.
Yes, sir. Just one simple question, Representative Gay. What do we mean by adequately secured? What define that?
I didn't understand you.
Adequately secured.
That's legislative language. You have to ask those lawyers that.
All right, I'll ask the lawyers.
Well, I just understand it. It's that it would restrain it to keep it from happening like happened to that lady's daughter. That when the load comes loose, you're completely at the mercy of.
But what I'm saying is, I mean, is this chains or another device that holds it? When you say adequately secured, how are you going to determine if that load came loose that it was not adequately secured?
Well,
maybe I should ask the General Counsel.
I determined on my vehicle by the size of my trailer and the strength of the chain that was needed to keep it from happening. And I guess that's what the engineers would have to do, I guess, to make a determination. As I say, it was pretty simple for me to look at the chain and tell whether it was heavy enough to keep my 1,200-pound trailer from cutting loose.
All right.
All right. Sorry. Mr. Jaspers.
And thank you, Chairman Yates, for bringing this bill to us. Let us work with you and the subcommittee on it. And I just want to I'll follow up, Representative Frazier, on that adequately. It's just like having a bed on top of your truck. And you're driving down the road and it comes off. You've got to adequately secure it. That means you've got to do it, or you're responsible for it coming off, whether it be a ladder, a bed on 285, or what, a sofa, washing machine. And so this bill takes a trailer and attaches it to your truck. So you have to adequately do it, no matter what it takes, whether it be the appropriate chains or safety devices that's on there. You as the mover of that vehicle with the trailer have to hold it. That's what we're getting at.
That was because I have seen mattresses and ladders and everything driving down the highway supposedly adequately secure, and they still come loose.
Yes, ma'am. And is it okay to discuss, Mr. Chairman? And that, but then again, you are responsible. If you're seen, if it comes off, you're responsible for it. And I think that was where we went through, and I think we sat down with Farm Bureau and the folks that really work with people who carry trailers on a daily basis to make sure we made that responsibility the driver of the vehicle as a trailer too. And I think and I appreciate Chairman Yates working with us on that.
And I do too, and I appreciate it because there's a loss of life here. So I am not taking this lightly, but I just wanted to make sure that we had enough strong language in here as it relates to if it's not adequately secure. You already know, but we need to determine what that is. Like you say, in other states, you had chains that you could.
Well, in Colorado
secure.
we did. Yeah. And as I say, I made the determination, but I made it to be sure. I probably had a chain twice as strong as I needed, but I knew I was responsible if it broke loose, and so I wasn't about to let that happen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And clearly there's de facto evidence that if a trailer is loose on the highway or something, if a ladder does fall off your truck, it clearly was not adequately secured for the purpose of enforcement. Mr. Chairman, I was just going to tell you just briefly a story. I was some 10 years ago or so coming down I-16, and the gentleman there was a truck put on a little small trailer to the right of me and a little bit ahead of me, and literally the trailer came off of that truck, flipped over, and bounced is the only way I know how to describe it in front of the windshield. Probably missed me by that far, and to this day I know God has a reason for me to be here because I shouldn't be, and so I can understand well how quickly that can happen. It was just amazing to me that I'm still alive. But yeah, everybody should be responsible. If you're towing a trailer or anything else or a ladder, whatever, you should make sure it's adequately secured. So I support you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I drive defensively every morning and afternoon on this highway because if I see an unsafe load, I drop back and get away from it.
Sir.
It's you just have to take care of yourself.
Some things age and walking around since certainly
Yeah, I learned a few
over app-based technology.
I learned a few things in 93 years.
All right. Do we have any other questions from any of the committee members? All right. Chairman Jaspers.
I'd like to report this out of our subcommittee and move due pass.
We have a motion from the chairman of the subcommittee from whence it came with a due pass recommendation. Do we have any discussion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Do we have any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes clearly have it. Thank you, Chairman Yates.
Do I give that to Legislative Council, or do you do that?
We've already had it, and
Thank
it's
you.
already passed as a committee sub.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. We appreciate your tolerance. Let's see. All right, we have, let's see here, House Bill 206, Representative Harrell. Mr. Harrell, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here.
Let's see.
All right, members of the committee, it's the pleasure, House Bill 206, which is LC 390789. This is a measure, just as a reminder, that passed out of the House last session. I think it was 163 to 4. It passed the Senate committee and just simply didn't make it to the floor as time ran out. But we have in Georgia a statute titled, I believe, the Spencer Pass Law, which says as a motorist approaches an emergency vehicle working in the roadway, they should take due care to slow down, if possible, move over a lane when passing. This bill would add an active sanitation vehicle to that existing code. And you might be surprised to learn that sanitation workers are the fourth most dangerous job working in the roadway in our nation. Continues to be this year, just as it was last year. A number of workers are injured and sometimes fatally killed. As you know, with the sanitation workers, it's very difficult for them to get off the roadway when they're driving the trucks. They just have nowhere to go. They can't pull into each individual driveway, and the men and women that work there are working in harm's way in the street. The one modification we made this year to the bill versus last year is, if you will, and let's see if I can find it here. It's on line 22 at the very end of line 22. Last year it said that the motorists should reduce their speed, in which we added a little clarification here. At the very end of that line 22, it says which speed shall be at least 10 miles per hour less than the posted speed limit. The reason we added that is there has been a study and some concern with our friends in the other chamber that there may have been some instances where it was just too much ambiguity to allow the officer to make that judgment call, was he going slow enough or and before issuing the citation. So this makes it clear to the motorist, as long as they reduce the speed by 10 miles an hour, that they would be over the posted limit in that area, that they would be remain in compliance with the law. Very simple bill. I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have, and certainly include any questions for ask your support for passage. Yes, sir, and that matches current law with the other items on the statute.
My friend Representative Harrell had to ask one. Okay, so this is all fine and dandy in Metro Atlanta, where we have big green trucks or maybe possibly blue trucks with very nice flashing yellow, amber, white, or red lights. But in rural Georgia, we have state body trucks that don't have these things. And I don't know. I'm just wondering, they don't have those flashing lights. They may have their emergency flashers on, and that's about it. The guy's jumping out of the truck, not on hanging off the back as many times. And I'm just wondering, I was thinking, have you thought about, and it's not yay or nay on your bill, but in rural Georgia, how this affects or will be used? I was just sitting here reading this, thinking about where I live, out in the country.
Well, it would certainly be my intent to protect those workers, as well. I would certainly be open to a suggestion of how is that motorist approaching, unless they're familiar, depending on the type of vehicle they're operating. I have no objection to attempting to protect those workers as well if they're in a different type of vehicle. I'm just not quite sure how to structure it. And then, quite frankly, we really did just parrot as close as possible existing law with regard to those other emergency type vehicles that are working in the roadway.
I guess I'm saying we don't require any regulation on a independent contractor picking up trash and the size of lights or the brightness,
Right.
And I just wonder is there going to be some in rural Georgia? I know it doesn't change this. I think it's a great bill.
Right.
I'm just thinking about that down the road. Is that going to fit or affect?
Right.
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Quite welcome. Do we have any other questions? Ms. Frazier.
Just a note to let our representative know, in the rural area, this is how we summon our, when we pass our trash collections, this is what they do to us. They tell us to come on by. Okay? That's how we do it out in the country.
Not all drivers are as polite as they are in your district.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have any other questions from any of the committee members? Well, this appears to be a pretty good bill. This looks like something that might. Ms. Frazier, are you want to speak again? All right. It appears that you have a pretty good bill here. There's not a whole lot of. This actually looks like a bill that might save the life of former legislators as they're working on the trash trucks.
You never know what the future holds.
All right. No questions from the committee. What's the pleasure of the committee? We have a motion to pass. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All right. Do we have any further questions from any of the committee members? If not, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes clearly have it. Mr. Harrell, thank you so much. All right. Last but not least, we have House Bill 186, Mr. Seltzer. And I will tell everyone again that this bill is for discussion today only. I'm glad to see that the Second Amendment groups have not lost their touch from last year. The emails were certainly flowing. pretty fluidly. I don't know if any of the committee members got as many emails on 186 as I did, but it's nice to know that we're still respected and wanted up here by our friends and Second Amendment compatriots. Mr. Selson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bring before you today House Bill 186. It's a measure that's, that recognizes that the treatment of non-firearm related objects on school campuses has led to some unintended consequences that really called us last year as the legislature to act. Last year, with the passage of HB 826, this legislature act, in fact, this House acted in a unanimous way to decriminalize the mere possession of knives, chains, clubs, those kinds of things on school campuses, and hand those things over to the jurisdiction of school boards. In Cobb County and a number of counties around the state, young people, in ways that we would have never anticipated as a legislature, were subjected to harm's way and subjected to legal treatment that was well outside of the expectations of this legislature. I'll share some examples with the committee. In September of 2013 in Cobb County, in my House district, there's a young man who, in a routine search of the parking lot, the Cobb County law enforcement had dogs going through the parking lot sniffing for drugs, and the dog alerted on the young man's car, alerted purportedly for the purpose of gunpowder. They had brought the young man out of school, opened his car up, and they found inside the car, they found some residual fireworks, firecrackers, and those kinds of things. Those weren't the issue. But as the police went through the young man's trunk, they found 2 fishing poles and a tackle box. Inside that tackle box were 3 fishing knives longer than the legal limit of 2 inches. And the mere possession of that, which would have been, at the time would have been designated as a weapon, led to the young man's arrest, being handed over to the Cobb County Police for a felony arrest for felony possession of a weapon on within a school safety zone. Within 1 month of that incident, a very similar circumstance happened where a young man actually skipped class, came back to school for ball practice, and there had been some chatter. Maybe he had been involved in some wrong things, so the administration of the school went out to search the young man's car, found nothing. There's no reason to believe he had done anything wrong, but they did find a EMT device that you use to cut people out of safety belts. This young man had actually been involved on the scene of an accident within the previous year, and there had been some folks in a pretty bad car accident. The motorists were stuck inside their car and couldn't get out. And he was, as a 17-year-old, feverishly trying to cut through the safety belts to get these people out of the car. Ultimately, he did, got them out of the car. There was no explosion. But the circumstance of saving that family from the car reminded this young man the importance of being prepared. So in his personal car that he had at Allatoona High School that day had an L-shaped EMT safety device that's used exclusively for cutting seat belts. Well, the blade on that knife is longer than 2 inches. And the very fact that blade was in his possession, he was handed over to Cobb County law enforcement for felony possession of a deadly weapon in a school safety zone. Now, fortunately, we've got a great district attorney in Cobb County, Vic Reynolds. In all pros, the cases didn't press charges against the young man. But the very fact that school officials did not have the discretion to make decisions about a young person with a safety knife in their car because the blade was longer than 2 inches and it was validly in his possession. The fact that their hands were tied and they had no other legal remedy other than to turn him over to law enforcement for felony treatment shocked my senses enough that we finally had to do something about this issue. As we brought HB 826 last year, folks came to me from all over the state, from middle Georgia, big cities, small towns, saying they'd seen these kinds of things. Folks have come to me from within DeKalb County, and we have a real issue as a state. This legislature worked on HB 826 last year, passed a bill out of then the Juvenile Justice Committee, passed unanimously in the House, passed near unanimously in the Senate. I think the only dissenting votes were just some uncertainty about the bill, and it was signed by Governor Deal earlier this year. Why am I before you today? Because HB 826, really by happenstance, happened to amend some of the same code sections that the much broader firearms bill HB 60 amended. My bill was signed at 8:45 in the morning by Governor Deal, and 2 hours later in Ellijay, he signed HB 60, Representative Jasper's bill, that because Representative Jasper's bill amended some of the same code sections and was signed 2 hours after mine, obviously repealing any code section that had been passed prior to that, HB 60 took precedence, and the operative part of this bill, providing the kinds of protections that we acted in an important bipartisan way to extend to young people and extended to really anybody in school safety zones, was wiped clean, leading me to have to file HB 186 again to try to solve that same problem this year. Working with legislative counsel to try to piece in what was adopted into code last year. We submitted 186 as a new version of last year's HB 826, and that's what brings us here today. In doing that, there have been some questions about the breadth of, does the code does our effort, or did our effort that we took at 186, did it make some mistakes in how we define school bus and some things? Those are the efforts we've been working with some advocacy groups around the state to try to perfect. And Mr. Chairman, I have before you today a substitute that if it pleases the committee, I'd like to offer some further small amendments to make sure we get it exactly right. But I think we've got a substitute for you today that I think all groups can get behind. I've got groups from across the political spectrum supporting this effort, because I do think we as a legislature have a duty to ensure that a granddad that's going to a high school football game that has a pocket knife in his pocket doesn't get felony treatment for carrying a weapon on campus. Those things, as we did last year, should be in the hands of school boards, in a university setting, in the hands of the Board of Regents or a school or university board of directors, so that things that don't go bang, knives, chains in the back of your car, a club, a baseball bat, is actually within the old definition of a weapon. Those things are purely within the province of school boards to manage within their specific school functions, on school buses, and within school safety zones. That's the impetus behind HB 186, and as it pleases the committee, I'd be glad to go word through the bill, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Chairman Seltzler. All right. Of course, we've said this is for a work session hearing on this bill. Did you say that you have a committee substitutes for this?
I do.
Do you have copies of it?
I think you have them, Mr. Chairman, and we're working off of LC version 296416.
TS?
TS, yes, sir.
That is the substitute?
That's the substitute we've got, yes, sir.
Very good.
There are some further amendments I'd like to offer that are small and simple, but I think for discussion I think they'd be helpful to have.
Very good. All right. This time we're going to call up, since this bill apparently has generated some interest in a lot of the people here in Georgia. We'll call up a few people who
Mr. Chairman, if I could I highlight some things that address some specific concerns before you recognize some other folks briefly?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. And again, I'd like to thank folks. I know there's folks that are tuning in on the internet and some folks here in the audience. I'd like to really thank folks for getting engaged in the issue. A couple issues were raised, and I'll kind of walk through very briefly. In essence, the way we do this in the bill is the substitute clearly defines some things that require definitions, but operatively the way the bill works on lines 35 through 46 is the definition of a weapon is changed from firearms, pistols, and a whole broad range of things, including bats and knives and chains and the like, and it narrows it down to handgun or long gun. So for the purposes of the school safety zone provision that has felony treatment, handguns and long guns are those things that would continue to have felony treatment in a school safety zone unless it's one of the prescribed exceptions of law enforcement and so forth. Those knives, bats, clubs, those things are moved out, and they already exist in code in Title 20 where school boards have been given the power to do that. That part of HB 826 was never struck. That's still in the code from last year. The part that you're seeing here is just the operative part from 1611-127. Specific things, Mr. Chairman, for members of the committee that would be different from what we brought through subcommittee. They were identified to us by friendly members of the public. One was the definition of school bus. Existing law today, not in this bill, but existing law today creates a level of uncertainty that if parents and private cars are taking people to school events, there's the potential under existing law today for that to be treated as a school bus and thus a gun-free zone. I want to be very, very clear. HB 186 will do this, Mr. Chairman, if passed by the committee. Will ensure that only vehicles that are owned by school systems or leased by school systems, operated by school employees or independent contractors of the school system, i.e. a charter bus, only those would be treated as school buses moving forward. The substitute with a one-word change I'm going to suggest to make even further clear will clear that issue up completely. I thank folks to the emails they've gotten me. They've helped alert us to this issue to make the language exactly right, and I can commit to you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and members of the public. As an ardent supporter of individual liberty and Second Amendment rights, I am committed to getting this right, to protect those rights and strike the balance we've got that exists, I think, unanimously across our legislature to not overstep, not allow things within school safety zones that would I don't want to misrepresent what we're doing. I want to be very clear what we're doing is define school buses very clearly, so there's no question about that for everybody. Likewise, the definition of handgun, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest we add the definition of a long gun here needs to be split into 2 words. There's a couple of very small detailed things we need to do this to substitute, and I'd be glad to answer some questions if there's some from the members of the committee.
All right. Do we have any other questions at this point before we take a few? We've got a few people that want to give testimony today. Anybody have a question before we start taking testimony? You want to stay with us for a while?
I'll stand by, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. All right. Mr. Jaspers?
We'll wait. Okay.
We have a few people down here to speak. We have a Banks Wise.
Hello. My name is Banks Wise. I'm the political director for Georgia Gun Owners. We had issues with the original version of the bill, but it would seem that the substitute resolves those issues. And if the amendments don't do anything bad, we have no problem with it. And I assume there's no questions since.
Any questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. We have Mr. John Monroe. John, would you rather stand or sit?
I guess there's no point in passing on.
I see you got your grandfather Jerry with you, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. John Monroe, Vice President of GeorgiaCarry.org. As I think most of the committee members know, we had some initial concerns about the bill, and we thank Chairman Setzler for working diligently to try to address those. The original version, I think, created some inadvertent new criminal provisions that we had problems with, but those have been corrected, and with the amendments that Chairman Setzler talked about, we fully support the bill. And I'd also like to thank members of the committee and some of the subcommittee that I know received a lot of constituent communications and diligently communicated back to the constituents and told them that their support was contingent on making sure that we didn't recriminalize or newly criminalize things that weren't intended. So GeorgiaCarry.org supports the bill, and I thank the committee and Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
The committee as amended by substitute.
As amended by substitute and then further amended.
All right. Do we have any of the committee members have any questions? You have stunned me. You have absolutely stunned me that you haven't prompted a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thomas Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee. I ask for your favorable support and assent for a new pass recommendation, if not today, eventually on this legislative proposal. I submit to you that subsection Q of section 922 of chapter 44 of title 18 of the United States Federal Code as enacted by Congress does not criminalize the possession of handheld items other than firearms within these school safety zones, unlike Georgia, which today currently does due to the executive oversight and complications that arose from last year's passage of both legislative proposals that were of significance to many gun owners statewide. If it be the pleasure of this committee, I ask that this committee resolve these issues as soon or as expeditiously as possible so that none of the children in any of your districts have to endure or suffer the felony collateral consequences that would otherwise be assessed for inadvertent, accidental, or unintentional violations of this law, which have such serious ramifications under law today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would you stand for any questions? Do we have any questions from any of the members? That was about a mouthful and about as straight spoken as it comes.
Well, I like to keep my statements as concise and as succinct as possible to ensure timely debate and allow.
You know what? This chair certainly appreciates that. Do we have any questions? Any questions from any of the members? We want to thank you for being here, Thomas. All right. Do we have any questions from any of the committee? All right. Last chance. Anybody? We got a little bit of time. Anybody want to speak on this bill? Got anything that's bearing on your heart out here? All right. At the discretion of the chair, as I said earlier, this bill was for discussion only today. Good news. I'm going to send this to Chairman Jaspers with Subcommittee A. And you do know the difference. There's a Subcommittee A and a Subcommittee B. You don't want to go to Subcommittee B. I'm going to ask if Chairman Jaspers, if you would, since this is a special case, since these type of issues weigh heavy on the hearts of so many of our committee members, I'd like to set this one as a special committee with you on this one, not just the standard Committee A. Yes, sir. But if you would, in the notion of fairness, for anyone who does not like, that doesn't want these, I'm going to be sure that they will have a voice also. I think Representative Donahue would be a good one to represent the more liberal persuasion of this. Mr. Petrie, would you like to serve on this?
Love to, Chairman.
I'll find out just exactly where your heart and soul is on Second Amendment rights. Mr. Gravely?
Absolutely.
I believe that'd be a wonderful trio to serve with Representative Jaspers. And just in case y'all come to a tie vote, I'll be there to break that tie.
Yes, sir.
Well, speak up, Gerald.
He's not on the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, he's not.
He's here for an interested party at my request.
Oh, I am sorry. Well, you know what? We've had so many meetings together, and you've been here that I just assumed you was part of this meeting. Yes. Well, Mr. Gerald, would you like to serve on this? Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank somebody number 25 who wished to speak. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a question to the author. And to the organizations that are helping craft the amendments, a great debt of gratitude, but just a public clarification that was it ever the intent of the author or the co-sponsors, for that fact, in trying to repeal zero tolerance and allow innocent students who were unjustly facing felony charges for having what was having an object which was defined as an object or a weapon on campus. At any time, was it ever the intent of the author or the co-sponsors to prohibit, obfuscate, or infringe upon the Second Amendment rights of any law-abiding Second Amendment citizens?
Never. I can tell you that there's no, and again, let me separate myself from this bill since you asked the question directly. There may be no advocate in this legislature who's more ardent in another legislative proposal that we would have campus carry and be able to carry firearms on campus as an expression of one's fundamental right to protect themselves.
Thank you.
That's not invited in 186, but there's no stronger, more forceful, unwavering advocate than I. And I want to say that because this bill is something that is an urgent, immediate imperative. and any effect that it had unintentionally is just part of the process of trying to protect language. And I have thanked everyone who's emailed me or called me angrily for their zeal, because I shared their zeal. We're committed to protecting Second Amendment rights in every form or fashion without any infringement whatsoever. Appreciate your question.
Furthermore, Mr. Chairman?
Have at it.
I, too, would like to express my sincere thanks to the members of GeorgiaCarry.org, Georgia gun owners, for their zeal as well, for their commitment to the Second Amendment, and for their partnership on the Second Amendment, and would also express the co-sponsors' ardent belief in protecting the Second Amendment as well on this bill. And let the record reflect that, Mr. Chairman.
Apparently, I say that not as a political issue. I don't think that, just as I've said before, when we walk into a school campus, we don't shed our civil rights. We don't walk into a school campus and have to submit to separate water fountains or restrooms. Our civil rights follows everywhere we go. Our right to protect myself follows me whether I'm on a school campus or whether I'm in a legislative body. So I think it's important to understand that this is a political issue. It's an issue of what we do here. I think it's a highlight of how strongly Georgians feel about the response to this bill.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Jaspers.
Chairman Setzler, thank you for your cooperative nature, and I thank you for tolerating me in my first chairmanship of the Subcommittee A, and probably not doing as good a job as I should have getting everybody together on the same page on this, but I appreciate you working till late last night to come to a conclusion that I think really is positive for everybody, and I sure just my public thanks for you doing that and all the advocacy groups like Georgia Carry. Thank you.
Well, that being said, I want to thank this committee for making me feel so warm and cuddly when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. Mr. Seltzer, thank you for bringing this bill forward. Thank you to the gentleman of GGO. Thank you to our friends with Georgia Carry, and thank you to all those folks out there in Radio Land for sending us all these emails and staying on top of this. I look forward to hearing from y'all's report back after your work is over. Ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all for being here today, and this meeting stands adjourned.